I remember my life before everything changed, back when the world felt predictable and safe. My mornings began with the familiar sound of my alarm clock buzzing insistently, pulling me from the warmth of sleep. I'd roll over and see her, my wife, still nestled in the sheets, her hair cascading over the pillow like a dark waterfall. I'd smile, lean over and plant a soft kiss on her forehead, whispering a quiet good morning. Those moments were the foundation of our life together, a cozy routine that soothed me. We lived in a modest but comfortable apartment, filled with the remnants of our shared life, framed photographs of vacations, souvenirs from our travels, and little trinkets that told stories of our relationship. My wife, Sarah, was my partner in every sense. We shared laughter, dreams, and plans for the future. I had a stable job at a marketing firm, and she worked in human resources. Our lives were intertwined, and I thought we were on the same page. The office where I worked was a typical corporate environment, buzzing with the hum of phones and the chatter of colleagues. I had a small but dedicated team, and we often collaborated on projects that brought us closer. Among my coworkers was Jake, a charming and charismatic guy who had a knack for making people laugh. He was the life of the office, always ready with a joke or a friendly chat. Sarah and I often talked about our workdays over dinner, sharing anecdotes and experiences. I remember her mentioning Jake a few times, always in a light-hearted manner. I thought nothing of it, but looking back, there were subtle hints that I chose to ignore. Sarah had started coming home later from work, claiming to be caught up in meetings or project deadlines. I brushed it off as the typical stress of corporate life. She was ambitious, and I admired her dedication. Little did I know that the very office where I spent my days was becoming the backdrop for something far more sinister. As the weeks rolled on, I noticed her being more secretive with her phone, quickly shutting it off when I walked into the room or changing the subject when I asked about her day. I convinced myself it was just stress, that she was simply preoccupied with work. I was blinded by love and trust, unwilling to see the cracks forming in the foundation of our marriage. The dread began to seep in slowly like a creeping vine. I tried to shake it off, reminding myself of all the good times we had shared. But the feeling lingered, a nagging whisper in the back of my mind. I wanted to believe that everything was fine, that our love was strong enough to withstand anything. Yet the signs were there, just beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. Now, as I sit here reflecting on those days, I can't help but feel a mix of nostalgia and dread. It was a time before the storm, a moment when I thought I had everything I ever wanted. Little did I know that the very fabric of my life was about to unravel, leading to a discovery that would shatter my world. The day I found out would be etched in my memory forever, a moment that would change everything. I had no idea that behind the smiles and the mundane routines, my wife was harboring a secret, a betrayal so deep that it would send shockwaves through my very existence. The signs were there, but I was too blinded by love to see them. I can still recall the day that my world tilted off its axis, the day I stumbled upon the truth. It began like any other Tuesday, a typical morning filled with the mundane rituals of life. I kissed Sarah goodbye as she left for work, her smile brightening my day, unknowingly hiding the storm brewing beneath her facade. I headed to the office, my mind occupied with the tasks ahead, oblivious to the impending revelation that would shatter my reality. That afternoon, I was deep into a project, focused on a presentation due the next day. My phone buzzed with a notification, pulling me from my concentration. It was a message from a colleague, Lisa, asking if I had seen anyone in the conference room. I quickly responded, no, why? Her reply came almost instantly. I just saw Sarah and Jake go in there together. They've been in there for a while. I felt a chill run down my spine, a knot forming in my stomach. I brushed it off as paranoia. Surely, they were just discussing work, right? But the uneasy feeling persisted. I tried to focus on my presentation, but my mind kept wandering back to the message. I couldn't shake the idea that something was off. After what felt like an eternity, I decided to check the conference room myself. With each step down the hallway, my heart raced. The closer I got, the more convinced I became that I was overreacting. Maybe they were just catching up on a project. I reached the door, hesitated for a moment, and then gently pushed it open. What I saw nearly stopped my heart. Sarah and Jake were sitting close together at the table, their heads bent over a laptop, laughing softly. For a brief moment, I thought about turning around and leaving them to their work. But then I noticed the way she leaned in toward him, the way their shoulders brushed against each other, a physical intimacy that felt wrong. A sickening realization washed over me. I stood frozen in the doorway, my breath caught in my throat. They were not just coworkers, they were too comfortable with each other. My heart pounded in my chest as I processed the scene before me. The laughter, the closeness, it was a betrayal that I hadn't anticipated. In that moment, my entire world shifted and I felt the ground beneath me crumble. I stumbled back, retreating down the hallway, my mind racing. How could this be happening? My thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. I had trusted her completely, never even considering the possibility of infidelity. The questions flooded my mind. How long had this been going on? Had I been so blind to the signs? I returned to my desk, my heart heavy with despair. I tried to continue working, but the words on the screen blurred together. All I could think about was the sight of them together, the laughter that echoed in my ears like a haunting melody. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly lost. My mind raced, searching for answers, but all I found was a deep, gnawing pain in my chest. The hours dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus on anything but the image of Sarah and Jake. I had to confront her. The thought both terrified and enraged me. I needed to know the truth, to hear it from her mouth. But how could I even begin to approach such a delicate topic? I had no idea how she would react, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let this go unaddressed. As I packed up my things for the day, I felt a storm brewing inside me, a mix of anger and heartbreak. I left the office, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and confusion. I rehearsed the confrontation over and over in my head, each scenario more painful than the last. When I finally arrived home, I was a bundle of nerves, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I had to confront her, to demand the truth. The thought of facing her filled me with dread, but I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. The facade of our perfect life was crumbling, and I was about to uncover the reality beneath it. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Sarah was in the kitchen, her back to me as she prepared dinner. The scent of garlic and herbs wafted through the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. She turned around when she heard the door, her face lighting up with a smile that felt like a dagger to my heart. "Hey, you're home early," she chirped, trying to infuse the room with her usual warmth. But to me it felt forced, a mask that she wore so effortlessly. I could see the innocence in her eyes, the joy that was so familiar, and it made the weight of my discovery even heavier. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with an underlying tremor. I could feel the knot tightening in my stomach as the words hung in the air between us. The smile faded from her face, replaced by a flicker of concern. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing. I could see her searching my face for clues, but I knew I had to be direct. I couldn't let her charm and warmth disarm me. "Not really. I saw you and Jake today," I said, my heart pounding as I forced the words out. "In the conference room. You were laughing together, leaning in close. What's going on?" Her expression shifted, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt flash across her face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "It was just a work meeting, I promise. We were discussing the project," she replied, her tone defensive. "Don't lie to me, Sarah," I snapped, the anger rising within me, fueling my voice. "I saw how you two were together. It didn't look like just work to me. How long has this been going on?" She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I could see her mind racing, trying to formulate an answer that would satisfy me, that would somehow erase the reality that had come crashing down around us. "Please, just tell me the truth," I pleaded, my voice softer now, tinged with desperation. "I deserve to know." Tears welled in her eyes, and I felt a pang of guilt for the pain I was inflicting. But I couldn't back down now. I needed to hear her say it. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she finally said, her voice shaking. It just happened." "What do you mean it just happened?" I asked, incredulous. "You think that makes this any better? You betrayed me, Sarah, you betrayed us." "I was lonely," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been so busy with work and I felt neglected. Jake was there and I guess I don't know, I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I echoed, disbelief pouring from my lips. "This isn't just a mistake, Sarah. You've been having an affair in my office with my coworker. How could you do this to me?" The tears began to fall and I felt my heart break at the sight of her anguish. But the sorrow I felt for her was overshadowed by the betrayal that had ripped through my chest like a knife. "I trusted you," I said, my voice trembling. "I thought we were happy. We were happy. I didn't mean for it to happen like this." She cried, taking a step toward me, her hands reaching out as if to comfort me. But I recoiled, the anger and pain overwhelming any instinct to embrace her. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice cold and harsh. "You've shattered everything we built together. I need time to think." The silence that followed felt deafening. I could see the regret etched on her face, but it did little to soothe the storm inside me. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her anymore. I needed to escape, to put some distance between us before I did something I would regret. I walked out of the kitchen and into the living room, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and loss. I could hear her sobs behind me, each one a reminder of the pain that now defined our relationship. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands, the weight of it all crashing down on me. How could she do this? How could she betray me in the very place where I spent my days? The questions spiraled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, the life I knew crumbling around me. I thought of the moments we had shared, the laughter, the love, the plans for the future. It all felt like a cruel joke now, a facade that had hidden the truth from me for so long. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed to figure out what I was going to do next. The days that followed the confrontation were a blur of confusion and heartbreak. I felt like a ghost wandering through my own life, unable to connect with the reality around me. Each morning, I would wake up and see her lying next to me, and a wave of anger and betrayal would wash over me. I couldn't shake the image of her with Jake, the laughter they shared, the intimacy that had been stolen from me. Work became a place of torment. I had always found solace in my job, a distraction from the chaos of life. But now, every corner of the office felt tainted. I would walk past the conference room and remember the sight of them together, the betrayal echoing in my mind. My colleagues noticed the change in me. I was quieter, more withdrawn. I could see their concerned glances, but I couldn't bring myself to explain the turmoil that was consuming me. Jake, oblivious to the storm he had unleashed, continued to act as if nothing had changed. He would joke with me at the coffee machine, completely unaware of the resentment boiling beneath my surface. I wanted to scream at him, to confront him, but I held back. I didn't want to make a scene at work. Instead, I retreated further into myself, burying my emotions beneath a facade of professionalism. The mental strain was exhausting. I found it difficult to concentrate on projects, my mind constantly drifting back to Sarah and the life we had built together. I replayed our conversations, searching for signs I had missed, moments that could have hinted at her infidelity. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that no longer made sense. At home, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Sarah and I barely spoke, the silence between us heavier than any argument. She would try to reach out to bridge the gap, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I was angry, hurt, and confused. I wanted to scream, to cry, but mostly I wanted to understand why this had happened. One evening, after another day of pretending everything was fine at work, I finally broke down. I sat on the edge of our bed, my head in my hands, the weight of my emotions crashing down on me. I could hear Sarah moving around in the kitchen, the clinking of pots and pans serving as a reminder of the life we once shared. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative as she appeared in the doorway. I looked up at her, seeing the worry etched on her face. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but another part of me was exhausted from the turmoil. "I don't know what to say, Sarah," I finally replied, my voice low and strained. "What is there to talk about? You've made your choice." "I made a mistake," she insisted, her eyes pleading for understanding. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you and I want to fix this." "Do you even understand what you've done?" I shot back, my anger flaring anew. "You've betrayed my trust in the worst way possible. How can I ever believe anything you say again? I know I hurt you and I'm so sorry," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. Please just give me a chance." Her desperation was palpable, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished by the reality of our situation. How could I rebuild trust when it felt like the very foundation of our relationship had been obliterated? "I don't know if I can," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I don't know if I can forgive you." The silence that followed was deafening. We stood there, two people caught in a storm of emotions, unsure of what to do next. I felt lost, adrift in a sea of pain and confusion. As the days turned into weeks, I tried to navigate this new reality. I spoke to a few friends, seeking advice and support. They listened, offering sympathy, but I could see the confusion in their eyes. How could I still love someone who had hurt me so deeply? I began to consider therapy, a safe space where I could process my emotions and figure out what I wanted moving forward. I made an appointment, hoping it would help me find clarity. I needed to understand whether I could salvage our marriage or if it was time to walk away. At work, I kept my distance from Jake, the mere sight of him igniting a firestorm of anger within me. I refused to engage in small talk, focusing on my tasks instead. I couldn't afford to let him, or anyone, see how much this was affecting me. But as I sat in meetings, I could feel the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. I was no longer the confident, easygoing employee I once was. I was a man grappling with heartbreak, struggling to maintain a facade of normalcy while my world crumbled around me. Each day felt like a battle, a struggle against the emotions that threatened to consume me. I wanted to scream to let the world know how much I was hurting, but I kept it all inside, locked away behind a mask of professionalism. I was fighting a war within myself, and I didn't know how to win. As I lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, I realized that something had to change. I couldn't continue living in this limbo, caught between love and betrayal. I needed to make a decision, to confront the reality of our situation. The decision to seek therapy was a turning point for me. I walked into the small office on a chilly Wednesday afternoon, my heart racing with a mix of hope and apprehension. The therapist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, greeted me warmly and gestured for me to take a seat. As I settled into the chair, I realized that this would be the first time I would speak openly about the whirlwind of emotions that had consumed me since discovering Sarah's affair. "Tell me what brings you here today," she said, her voice soothing and calm. I took a deep breath, summoning the courage to share my story. "My wife had an affair with my coworker," I began, the words tumbling out like a confession. "I found them together in my office, and ever since, I've been struggling to cope with the betrayal." Her expression softened, and she nodded as I recounted the events leading up to that moment, the signs I had ignored, the confrontation, and the aftermath. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I had been carrying this burden alone for too long, and sharing it with someone who listened without judgment felt liberating. "Have you talked to Sarah since the affair?" she asked, her tone gentle but probing. "Yes, but it feels like we're just going in circles," I admitted. "She says she wants to fix things, but I don't know if I can forgive her. I can't shake the feeling of betrayal." "Trust is a fragile thing," she replied thoughtfully. "Rebuilding it takes time, honesty, and a willingness from both partners to confront the underlying issues that led to the affair." Her words resonated with me. I realized that the road to healing would not be easy, but it was necessary if I wanted to find closure, whether that meant rebuilding our marriage or moving on. I left the session feeling a glimmer of clarity, a sense that I was beginning to understand the complexity of my emotions. That evening I returned home, determined to have an honest conversation with Sarah. As I walked through the front door, I found her in the living room, flipping through a photo album. She looked up in her face lit up for a brief moment before the reality of our situation settled back in. "Hey," she said softly, her voice tentative. "How was your day? Can we talk?" I replied, my tone serious. She nodded and we sat down on the couch, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. "I went to therapy today," I began, gauging her reaction. She looked surprised but intrigued. "I need to understand what happened between us, and I want to hear your side of the story." Sarah's expression shifted, a mix of hope and fear crossing her face. "I'm glad you're seeking help," she said. "I want to understand too. I didn't want to hurt you." "Then let's be honest with each other," I urged, my heart pounding. "What led you to Jake? Why did you feel the need to seek comfort in someone else?" She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "I felt so alone, like you weren't really there for me. You were always wrapped up in work, and I didn't know how to reach out. Jake was just there. He listened to me, made me feel valued when I felt invisible." Each word she spoke was like a knife cutting deeper into the wound. I realized that her feelings of neglect were valid, but they didn't justify her actions. "But you chose to betray me," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You could have talked to me. We could have worked through it together." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I was weak. I didn't think about the consequences. I thought it was just a fling, something that wouldn't mean anything. But it did, and now I'm left with the wreckage of my choices." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. I could see the remorse etched on her face, and it stirred a mix of emotions within me: anger, sadness, and something that resembled compassion. I wanted to scream at her, to let her know how deeply she had hurt me, but I also wanted to understand her pain. "Do you still love him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "No," she replied, shaking her head vehemently. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I love you and I want to fight for us, but I know I have to earn your trust back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her words struck a chord within me. I had spent so much time wrapped in my own pain that I hadn't considered the depth of her regret. It didn't erase what had happened, but it made me realize that perhaps there was a path forward, a chance to rebuild, but only if we were both committed to the journey. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I admitted, my voice trembling, "but I'm willing to try if you are." The relief that washed over her face was palpable. "I'll do everything I can to prove to you that I'm serious about this," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll go to therapy too, and we can work through this together." As we sat together, the weight of our shared pain felt a little lighter. We were embarking on a long and uncertain road, but for the first time since the affair was revealed, I felt a flicker of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but perhaps there was a chance for us to heal, to rebuild what had been broken. In the days that followed, we began to communicate more openly. We set aside time for conversations about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was uncomfortable at times, but it was necessary. I realized that while the betrayal had shaken the foundation of our relationship, it also opened the door for honest dialogue, something we had neglected for far too long. As I navigated this new territory, I began to understand the importance of trust, not just in our relationship but in all aspects of life. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time. As weeks turned into months, my life began to transform in ways I never anticipated. The road to healing was rocky, filled with moments of doubt, anger, and vulnerability. But it was also marked by small victories, glimmers of hope that reminded me of the love Sarah and I once shared. We committed to our therapy sessions, both individually and as a couple. In those safe spaces, we peeled back the layers of our relationship, confronting the issues that had long been buried. I learned to express my feelings openly, sharing my fears and insecurities without fear of judgment. Sarah, in turn, worked on understanding her motivations and the reasons behind her actions. We were both learning to communicate more honestly, a skill that had eluded us in the past. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, we found ourselves sitting on the couch, the weight of our conversation lingering in the air. "I never thought we'd be here," I said, looking into her eyes. "I didn't think we could come back from this." "I didn't either," Sarah confessed, her voice trembling. "But I'm grateful for the chance to rebuild. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn your trust back." Her sincerity struck a chord within me. I realized that while the scars of betrayal would always remain, they didn't have to define our future. We were both committed to working through the pain, learning to grow together rather than apart. As the months passed, I began to feel a shift within myself. I was no longer consumed by anger or resentment. Instead, I found strength in vulnerability, allowing myself to embrace the complexity of our relationship. I started to let go of the past, understanding that holding onto the pain would only hinder our progress. One day, while going through old photo albums, I stumbled upon a picture from our honeymoon, a moment frozen in time when everything felt perfect. I couldn't help but smile at the memory of our carefree laughter and the love that had radiated between us. In that moment, I realized that while we had faced a significant obstacle, the foundation of our love was still there, waiting to be rebuilt. "Hey, look at this," I called to Sarah, holding up the photo. She came over, her eyes lighting up as she recognized the moment captured in time. "Wow, we were so young," she said, her voice filled with nostalgia. "I remember that day like it was yesterday." "Me too," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. "It reminds me that we've had so many beautiful moments together. I want to create more of those, but we have to keep working on ourselves." "Yes, absolutely," she agreed, her eyes reflecting a mix of determination and love. "I want us to be happy again, to find our way back to each other." As we continued to reminisce, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The journey was far from over, but I was beginning to believe that we could emerge stronger than before. Trust would take time to rebuild, but I was ready to embrace the process, one step at a time. The following months brought challenges, of course. There were moments of doubt, nights when I would wake up in a cold sweat, haunted by memories of her betrayal. But I learned to lean on the tools we had acquired in therapy, using them to navigate the emotional turbulence. I shared my fears with Sarah, and she listened, offering support and understanding. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I took a deep breath, summoning the courage to voice my feelings. "I want to forgive you, not just for your sake, but for mine too. I want to let go of the anger, but I need to know you're fully committed to this." "I am," she said, her eyes earnest. "I'm committed to us to making things right. I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve." Her words resonated deeply within me. I realized that forgiveness wasn't a destination, it was a journey, one that required patience and understanding. I didn't have all the answers, but I was willing to try. As time went on, I began to see the changes in Sarah. She was more open, more attentive, and more willing to engage in difficult conversations. We discovered new ways to connect, exploring shared interests and nurturing the bond that had been strained. We took weekend trips, tried new activities, and even started date nights again, slowly rediscovering the joy of each other's company. One evening, as we sat under the stars, I turned to her, my heart full. "I think we're going to be okay," I said, a smile breaking across my face. "I can see the love we once had returning." "I feel it too," she replied, her voice soft. "Thank you for being patient with me, for believing in us even when it was hard." As I looked into her eyes, I realized that our journey had transformed me in ways I never expected. I had learned the importance of vulnerability, the strength found in honesty, and the power of forgiveness. I understood that love wasn't just about perfection. It was about navigating the imperfections together, hand in hand. Our relationship was no longer the same as it had been before the affair, but it was evolving into something new, something stronger, built on a foundation of trust and understanding. We had weathered the storm, and while scars remained, they served as reminders of our resilience. In the end, I learned that betrayal could shatter trust, but it could also pave the way for growth and healing. I emerged from this experience with a deeper appreciation for love, a renewed commitment to our relationship, and a profound understanding of the power of second chances. As I sit here reflecting on this journey, I realize that life is a series of choices, and the choice to love, to forgive, and to rebuild is the most powerful one of all. Our story is far from over, but I am ready to embrace whatever comes next, knowing that together we can face anything. And with that realization, I close this chapter of my life, ready to write the next one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. Thank you for joining me on this journey.